Hello, everybody. Welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott Tailfoot.
Josh, my friend, there's a bit of a debate brewing around Elden Ring overall. Now, some of this feels like it's algorithmically generated in regards to how much of it is thrown in front of your eyes. Although you need only look to the likes of the Metacritic score around Elden Ring, the review bombing that accompanied it across the launch weekend, and the fact that there's a hell of a lot of discourse around the fact that the way the game has been advertised is a little bit clashing with the reality of what it is itself.
Well, this is fascinating to me, Scott Tailfoot, because I'm jumping into this news video knowing literally nothing about it, because like you said, my echo chamber, I have not seen anything really negative at all. In fact, I've probably seen more people talking about Euphoria, the season finale, than I have Elden Ring, so please illuminate.
The Elden Ring / backlash. This just came from one of our bosses just going, have you seen this? Have you seen how many people are having a bit of a few things to say about Elden Ring? Now, I think there are some valid factors to this, and it reminds me of what happened with Bloodborne, where back when that game came out in 2015, there was that whole thing on every single Sony official post on their Twitter feeds, on their social media pages, had a lot of people saying, the way you've advertised this game is this fun hack and slash fantasy looking Lovecraftian hack and slash thing, but it's actually brutally hard, and nowhere was I told that was what I was getting into. And we had that again with Sekiro, where it sparked off the whole idea that maybe the game is too hard and you're never actually going to be able to get your money's worth. And that whole conversation, it feels very much like a reigniting of that conversation, that debate around not really knowing what you're getting yourself into. And some of this stuff, it is that whole go-to thing of you're getting a From Software game, you're getting the next thing from the Dark Souls people, and Dark Souls has this insanely tough reputation, so quote unquote you should know what you're getting yourself in for. There is also, though, quite a valid side to this, where if you start searching the term Elden Ring accessible, or Elden Ring approachable, or Elden Ring easiest, there are tons of headlines around the idea that this is the easiest Dark Souls yet, the easiest Soulsborne game yet, the most approachable, the most accessible one yet. What do you think of that stuff before we go further?
Listen, when it comes to the accessibility of it, I think I agree with the headlines. I think Elden Ring is the most accessible game that From Software has produced, just in the way that it eases you into the mechanics and the world and kind of gives you a bit more of a nudge about where to go. That said, the most accessible From Software game is still a From Software game.
Yes.
And to a lot of people, it's still going to be like, especially if they've not played one of these before, or like you said, don't know what they're getting into, it's still going to be incredibly difficult, incredibly head-scratching at times. And it's funny because Elden Ring, From Software has such this hardcore kind of following, this fandom built around video gamers. Yes, well, I wasn't mentioning those. The get good thing in an entirely different thing. Yes. But what I mean is, it was born out of a kind of hardcore community, and it's grown and it's grown and it's grown. And now Elden Ring is this kind of like crossover mainstream thing. It's getting all of these reviews, it's getting this big marketing push, everyone's talking about it. So naturally, it's going to get a lot of people in who haven't experienced this before, don't know what the name From Software is. People who might only buy a couple of games a year, Grand Theft Autos, Call of Duty, whatever, looking at the scores, looking at the buzz, going, I want to try this, jumping in and being like, I was not expecting this.
I mean, that's the whole thing. Even the likes of, mainstream streamer Dr. Disrespect threw his controller across the floor because he wasn't expecting, or he wasn't able to get through the level that he was on. But I think it's indicative of that wider, more casual approach to the franchise itself. And that idea of going, well, I'm going to be able to play for at least half an hour, whatever, before getting mashed into the ground, which is obviously not the case in something like Elden Ring. So there is more to this. Overall, there are some hiccups in regards to technical performance. Some of the review bombs are coming from the fact that, which are valid in regards to the frame rate dips, and the fact that Digital Foundry were forbidden from sharing their findings until after launch, which they then said the PlayStation 4 version runs better on a PS5 than the PS5 version itself. That stuff is 100% valid. And as much as I'm personally not going to throw around the word unacceptable, I believe devs are doing as much as they can, there is still that side of it where it's like, look, this thing should be running as smooth as possible on the newest hardware.
Well, this is the thing about Elden Ring, right? It's getting these 10 out of 10 reviews. I love the game, you love the game.
Pretty damn good.
But it's not a flawless game. Like you said, there are issues with it, especially when it comes to the optimization, when it comes to the technical aspects. Like you said, even on a PlayStation 5 that I'm playing it on right now, it doesn't matter whether I'm using performance mode or quality mode, the frame rate doesn't quite feel right, which combined with the graphics, which, they are nice. The art style is gorgeous. I love the way the game looks. But, if you're looking at pure, texture quality and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily feel like a next-gen open world game in the way that, something like Horizon does, for instance. So I can sort of see kind of people jumping into the next gen versions, especially, and being like, hang on, this doesn't run very well. It's not looking as good as I want it to be. And even small things like, it doesn't use the PS5 DualSense controller all that well. Like, I feel like that was a missed opportunity. To me, those are minor issues, but if you're someone who, like I said, hasn't, played this game necessarily, or played a game like this, jumping in, expecting like a next-gen marquee title, and then you're kind of like, hang on, this is kicking my ass. It also, it's chugging along.
I think as well it's worth addressing the fact that sales data-wise, 80% of all sales are on PlayStation. So there's quite a lot of people, I would hazard a guess, are going from Horizon to Elden Ring, or are looking at Horizon and then looking at Elden Ring and looking at the fact that Elden Ring is reviewing better overall in terms of the Metacritic score, and then maybe getting a bit disappointed that they're still waiting for the generation to kick in, or they want it to be something similar to like what Horizon is. Those things have different degrees of validity. The thing that I think has the most validity is the sheer performance side of it. The quality mode and the performance mode feel the same for Elden Ring. They don't really feel like you're getting either, really, depending on which one you pick. But it is interesting in regards to difficulty itself and imbuing your game with difficulty, to which Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director of Elden Ring and the president of From Software, has given a quote to The New Yorker. He was doing an interview and was talking about the fact that their games are known for being very difficult, and he just said that he feels very apologetic to people who feel like there's just too much to overcome, and he does want players, as many players as possible, to experience the joy that comes from overcoming hardship. He went into a whole thing about how he's inspired by his overall career trajectory and how much he overcame in his personal life, and he wanted to put that into games. He actually said he's not very good at games himself,
right?
So he's like, how do I make death as a overall thing in games more meaningful? He also said that victory should feel like an attainable feat, and hardship is what gives meaning to the experience. It's not something we're willing to abandon at the moment. It's our identity as a studio. So I think, he has very personal, creative reasons why they're going to double down on this stuff, but I do think it's interesting in regards to how the game is marketed and how it's talked about, and that idea of accessibility, approachability, and the grey area in there. They got all dredged up around Sekiro, where clearly accessibility should be massively prioritized. Make sure everybody is able to play your game, and then also the creative, artistic side of it, where you might just want something to be difficult because you're imbuing it with a sense of overcoming something eventually. I think they are different things.
Yeah, totally. I don't want to necessarily drudge up the
it was such a thing
conversation, go into that discourse, but I fully agree with you. I feel like the game should be as accessible as possible so everyone has the chance of playing them, but like you said, that's kind of separate to potentially difficulty in a way on making a challenge when like this game's reward system almost is built on trying to overcome that challenge, and that is obviously an integral part of these games to begin with.
I mean, the thing is that I realized playing Sekiro on a sheer... Because when I was playing Sekiro, I've not had anything in Elden Ring that has stressed me out as much as playing parts of Sekiro. But there was a part in Sekiro where my heart was beating so fast. I was like, have they done the research into this? Have they made sure that I'm not going to die? Like, are they pushing us to the limit of being that stressed out in the moment and that you are still actually going to be able to overcome it? Because I know what... This is just to flip it over. I know what the people are saying when they say, like you did, that this is the most approachable version of this feeling, this experience, as it is, because it is so freeform. And if something is battering you, right up front, there's a couple of bosses in the first area that can absolutely flatten you. So what is the game telling you? Go somewhere else, go level up, go figure things out. But at the same time, it's that angle on listening to what a game tells you. You're also being told follow this beam of light towards this thing, which takes you directly to the first boss, Margit, which is one of the ones that people are having the most trouble with. James Dowse, it's his first Dark Souls game or Soulsborne game, and he went straight there and got flattened, and then went, what am I doing? And he felt that frustration and then went and explored. But that side of it is interesting too.
Totally. I mean, like with Elden Ring, I feel like people might have problems with the way it's structured because, like you said, it's so open to begin with, and you could just get flattened for like a couple hours straight and just be like, what the hell
Sentinel
is going on?
Hated.
And I hope we're not coming across as kind of sort of like making excuses or being gatekeeper or anything. I just think with a game like Elden Ring, like it's not this mass market kind of like mainstream thing. It's it's almost, I wouldn't say so anyway. I feel like it's not a niche certainly, but it's a subgenre essentially. It's a Soulsborne game, and it's kind of like there are a lot of games that get rated sort of 10 out of 10 that are maybe an RTS or something that I kind of know I probably won't enjoy as much as someone who is really into RTSs because it's not necessarily my genre. And I feel like when it comes to FromSoft games, they're its own genre, and it comes with that baggage, but it's just not as well known as, calling something a racing game, calling something a shooter, calling something whatever, But a Soulsborne game has these connotations, and that quite hasn't really breached to the casual mainstream audience, perhaps.
Well, I think that's a whole other thing as well. That's why this thing, for me at least, is just so fascinating. I just think it's worth picking apart from as many different angles as possible, as much nuance as possible. The idea of difficulty in games is a risk, like as a sales risk, as a creative risk. You run the risk of people not seeing your game because they're getting put off too early. Sifu just had this, and they had to patch their second boss because the completion percentage of the levels went from 80% to 27%, and they immediately got on that and said, okay, we're sorry, and they changed the way that second boss works to get people through. So I think it's interesting in regards to a mainstream casual approach to video games. Are they expecting to be challenged, and how much? Like, back in the arcade mentality, it was you're getting abused essentially of your time and your efforts to get more money out of you, and that transferred over into the console space for home consoles. Nintendo hard was the phrase, and we meted that stuff out over time as they respected the consumer and they respected our time more and more. But it did start from that whole idea of your gamer metal and get good and all that kind of stuff. That all came from a money fleecing mentality in the first place. Did a whole video on this back when Sekiro came out, but it's like, thank you. It's that whole thing of, do we need it? Like, and I agree with Miyazaki. I love Miyazaki as a creative force, and I agree with his personal justification, but I think it's interesting watching how it reverberates, when the games get bigger and more people come in, and they, like, how much do they need to cater to that casual audience? And one last thing, and my big old ramble, that Jules said on our podcast, which go subscribe to the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast, that he was saying you can kind of, dictate your own difficulty. If you want to play a character more like a warrior and spend time in the open world, you can kind of mete out your own difficulty in that way, rather than just chasing down the checkpoints. I think that goes, that whole thing of the game telling you where to go, there is that side of it, but I think all these angles are valid.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's it. It's like if this isn't a game that anyone likes, or they think it's terrible, like it's wasting their time. I do totally get it. Like Ash, didn't like Sekiro because she was just like so frustrated with the opening, and I can totally see it. I feel like we're at a point where if you've played a lot of Souls games specifically, you go into this and you've got the muscle memory, you understand how they work, and you're kind of wondering how could someone dislike this? But like you forget that where like, people who have been a fan of this franchise for so long understand how it works. Whereas if you're coming into it fresh, it can be so obtuse, it can be so frustrating, and you can bounce straight off it. I almost did that with Sekiro myself, because Sekiro, even though it's very much a Soulsborne game, like the combat is so different from Dark Souls and Bloodborne, etc. And you have to unlearn the skills that you bring to it from Souls, and you have to relearn something else. And that, for me, I love that game now, but it was the first taste of, I remember when I didn't understand these games. I remember when I played Dark Souls for the first time and got my ass kicked. Like, it was not nice for the first few hours.
There is a level of BS to these games. Like, it's lovable to some degree. It is the thing that makes you go, I shouldn't have died there, or that collision detection caught me anyway, or whatever. There's a level of BS, and I think that is what makes it the Soul series. It's what makes it so talked about and so fascinating. But it's not that it's not there. Like, if someone focused on one of those elements and just said, look, I'm not playing for this reason, and this level of, no, you come to me is not why I come to video games, then I think that's valid too. I just think that there are interesting aspects in regards to the way it's marketed. It comes across as this big fantasy thing. It's written by George R.R. Martin. It's the follow-up to Dark Souls. There's absolutely a customer out there who's just going to pick it up on sheer hype and expect something that they can play, like I said, play for at least half an hour without feeling like they wasted their money. And then there's also the people who are going to go in there and just be absolutely flattened by the Tree Sentinel and just go, well, I can't even get past the first, not even a boss. I can't even get past the first enemy at all. And I think all that stuff is fascinating.
I've talked about this anecdote so much this week, but it does remind me of the first time when I played Dark Souls, and I thought I hated it.
I think everyone does.
I thought I hated it. I did hate it for the first few hours because I didn't understand that you weren't supposed to go to the catacombs. And I was just going to the catacombs and getting flattened by the skeletons. And I was like, this game sucks. Why do people like this thing?
No, man.
And obviously, I kind of figured it out, went to a walkthrough, and was like, oh, okay. But yeah, like just because of that anecdote, it's like, these games take a lot of acclimatizing to, and it's totally valid if you're just like, no.
The thing is as well, like, to sort of round this out, it's just like, I love that it kind of makes people have conversations. I think you can see the flip side of that you shouldn't have to go to a guide. You should never go to something that is outside the media experience itself to enjoy the media experience. But at the same time, they are kind of encouraging those conversations and encouraging those, wait, what the hell's going on? How did I die? What's going on? And that creates that community, that creates that overall appeal to the franchise and the series of games that we've got right now. Like I said, I think all of it is valid. I can see why some people would just be like, what the hell have I even bought?
Yeah.
This isn't Skyrim or whatever else. But I also see the side of people who value that challenge because it is so unique, because it is such a risk in a creative sense, in a marketing sense, and everything else. But let us know what you think down in the comments below. Have you played Elden Ring? Are you holding off? Is it your first Soulsborne game, or where are you on the whole spectrum of experiences? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.